Welcome trainers to another episode of Pokemon Go. I'm your host Jackie Fox, and today I'm at Thomas Bryan Park to catch Omanyte. Omanyte was probably my favorite fossil, although I'm a sucker for anything with sides, so Kabutops was also pretty awesome. But Twitch Plays Pokemon and the memes related, especially the Lord Helix meme, really put him over the top for me. And it's one of the few Pokemon that I've never found a good nest for with a good spawn rate, and I still don't have an Amistar, and I desperately want to name one Lord Helix. But I was looking on Sylph Road for places to go on my lunch break, and the reports say that this is a really good spawn point for them. But we'll find out. Hello folks, you can call me Professor Fox because today you're going to get a master certification in the top attackers and defenders in the metagame right now. I know I've already released a video quite recently for top attackers, and that reflected the changes that were made during the update that brought us Gen 2. But Niantic decided that they kind of broke the game a little bit, and some of you may have noticed it if you fought in gyms. The way that moves had changed just weren't good for the metagame at all. So they reverted things, a lot of the older moves at least, back to the way they were, at least in terms of their timing, energy per second, and of course this affected DPS. Power per hit for a lot of these moves changed as well. So yeah, anything you may have learned over the couple of days following launch, they kind of threw it out the window. So I'm going to revamp all of that and tell you who makes your best defenders and attackers, because the whole list have changed. There's still a few familiar faces on there. There's a couple of Pokemon that are never going to get knocked off of either list just because they're great and their moveset doesn't have as much to do with that as it could. But a lot of things have changed, and there's some very unlikely faces in the top right now. Another couple of things to talk about. Today I got a lot of footage in an Omanyte nest. I'm going to be playing that right over here through the entirety of this video. There's plenty of it because there were plenty of Omanytes to catch, even though I wasn't at the nest for very long. Also, another thing I'd like to tell you guys about is what happened last night. I work very closely with two Fight Club groups that I co-founded with a friend of mine. Both of us live at the edge of these two cities. One of those cities had their first ever raid last night, so I was happy to go out and support that. And luckily, it just lined up so that I could get back to the other city that was having a raid and join their raid as well. So I've got a lot of cool raid footage. The only bad thing is I've been having some issues with my video recorder, or my screen recorder for that I use in-game. And the audio is pretty much scrambled on all of that, so it might be a little bit more of a music video. I'm going to try to keep some of the audio in there, but it was borderline unusable at best. Which is sad, because a lot of it was hilarious, especially when we, spoiler alert, got stopped by the police. That was just a riot, and a very unique experience. Also, on our way to one of the gyms, we ran into a Dratini. Now, I was planning to save both of my 7-day streaks for a Maplewood run so I could get around 46 to 50,000 experience just farming items. Hopefully, get 2 of the new evolution items. But I figured if I was going to catch a Dratini after midnight anyways, I might as well spend for my first stop. That's when I got a King's Rock and finally got my first Slowking. But then later today, while I was at the Omanyte nest, I was spinning this really cool stop called A Link to the Past, which is a reference to, actually it was the first Legend of Zelda game that I ever played back for Game Boy, and Not only did that particular spawn point have a ton of Omanyte at it, pretty much every 10 minutes, but it gave me a metal coat. So now I have a Sizor too, and if you know me, that's what I've really been the most excited about for this particular generation, with the exception maybe of Blissey, and only because I really like fighting in gyms. But with no further ado, let's start talking about the best attackers and defenders in the current metagame since yesterday's changes. Since we have a lot of Pokemon to cover, because I'm also covering some legacy movesets that are still pretty viable and pretty awesome, and you should be holding on to these particular Pokemon, we're not going to have a lot of time for commentary. I'm probably just going to read through these lists kinda dry. I hope that's okay with you guys. So, we have a new number 1 attacker, and it's Alakazam. Previously it had been Gengar, and Gengar does pretty well on this list too, but for Alakazam you're looking for the moveset Confusion and Future Sight, which also does a pretty decent job on defense, even though I'm not quite sure that I would call Alakazam a great defender. Sure, he's probably pretty great in gyms, because he puts out damage pretty quickly even on defense, and Confusion is probably the best psychic defensive moveset. But on the other hand, he has a low CP and usually falls towards the bottom of gyms, and speaking from experience, is a total pain to prestige against. Okay, I said no commentary, so let me try to stick to that. Second slot is Dragonite with the new moveset Dragon Tail Outrage. Third slot is Espeon with the same moveset as Alakazam, Confusion and Future Sight. Another newcomer to the top tier is Flareon. Completely new moveset, Fire Spin and Overheat. So you might actually have reason to be excited to evolve a Flareon now. Next is our previous number 1, Gengar with Hex and Shadow Ball. Then we have Machamp with Counter and Dynamic Punch, Exeggutor with Extrasensory and Solar Beam, Charizard with Fire Spin and Overheat, Heracross with Counter and Close Combat, and then a surprise, Jinx with Confusion and Avalanche. Then we have Typhlosion with Ember and Overheat, Ursaring with Counter and Hyper Beam, Tyranitar finally makes it onto the list towards the bottom with Bite and Stone Edge, and finally we have Haunter with Shadow Claw and Sludge Bomb. Now, looking at the top movesets, including legacy moves, we have a few that really do well. In fact, an older Gengar makes it onto the list above the new Gengar. So, the best Gengar in the game is actually Shadow Claw Shadow Ball, edging out the newer Gengar by about 4% in damage. Also above the new Gengar is Shadow Claw Sludge Bomb. I've got a couple of those. I'm pretty excited about that being top tier now. Also, we have a legacy moveset for Exeggutor, Confusion, and Solar Beam. And finally, in the top 20, and this is including unobtainable Pokemon, we have Alakazam with Confusion and Psychic. Now let's talk defenders. Defenders can be kind of complicated, but the way that this is weighted takes into account a lot of things, including a Pokemon's tankiness. So it's not just the amount of DPS you can put out on defense, but it also includes other factors like how long the defender's going to stay in, which definitely affects how much damage it will deal before it's knocked out. That really comes in handy for Blissey, who comes in at number 1 with Zen Headbutt and Dazzling Gleam. At 84% of the effectiveness of Blissey, we have Dragonite with Dragon Tail and Outrage, and then we have Rhydon with Mud Slap and Earthquake, Tyranitar with Iron Tail and Crunch, Snorlax with Zen Headbutt and Hyper Beam, which is a little bit controversial. Actually, it's not controversial. There aren't legacy movesets included in that. Out of the new movesets, that's definitely the primo. Then we have Ampharos, which I'm pretty excited about, with Volt Switch and Zap Cannon. Exeggutor, once again with Extra Sensory and Solar Beam, great all-around Pokemon. Jolteon with Volt Switch and Thunderbolt. Gyarados with Dragon Tail and Outrage. Espeon also makes it onto this list with Confusion and Future Sight. Golem with Mudslap and Earthquake. Slowbro with Confusion and Ice Beam. Slowking with a really cool moveset, Confusion and Fire Blast. So if somebody's trying to use grass type attackers to take down the Slowking, they're going to be in for a really nasty surprise. Alakazam comes in on the list, right below Slowking with Confusion and Shadow Ball. Jinx also makes this list, Confusion and Avalanche. And Steelix, finally, with Iron Tail and Earthquake. Now, getting down this far on the list, actually at 55% of the effectiveness of a Blissey. So really, the ones that are in kind of a top tier, 70% of Blissey and above, are going to be Snorlax, Tyranitar, Rhydon, and Dragonite. But was that really a surprise? No, not quite. When we include legacy movesets, coming in just below Dragonite's top moveset, we have Legacy Exeggutor with Confusion and Solar Beam. And then just edging out the Snorlax I mentioned earlier that was a little bit controversial, we have Zen Headbutt Body Slam. It has about equal DPS to Zen Headbutt and Hyper Beam, but it edges it out in DPS by a little bit because Snorlax is able to basically use Body Slam every other attack on defense, which is a real pain. In addition, Body Slam is ridiculously hard to dodge, whereas dodging a Hyper Beam sometimes feels like a complete cakewalk. And those are the only legacy movesets that really made it into the top 20 movesets for defense. Although I will say there's 5 different Blissey movesets on this list, as well as 3 Dragonite movesets, all of which are new. A lot of the new Dragonite movesets seem to be geared towards making Dragonite a very viable defender. After I left the Omanyte nest that I was talking about earlier, I did what all of you guys should be doing when you visit a cool nest, or find a cool nest, or find an unverified nest, or find something that you know is a nest but hasn't been listed on Self Road. I logged into Reddit and I sent them a report, seen here. Actually, here. Actually, it's going to cover the whole screen. Whatever. I also took the time to put my brand new Amistar in a gym. Doesn't he look precious? By the way, Amistars are pretty cool to prestige against, since they have a double weakness to grass. Tangela is a really good Pokemon for this purpose. Especially if it has Solar Beam. Thanks for watching the video. As always, Pokemon Go Fight Club is here to help you battle with the best of them. And remember, the first rule of Pokemon Go Fight Club is to like and subscribe for more videos and more helpful content, so that you can defend your turf even better than you already do. Keep training, trainers. Not really sure what else to say. I'm done. Can't believe it.